Hello, and welcome to the training for the 21-22 Perkins 5 Strengthening Career and Technical Education for the 21st Century Grant. Since that is a bit of a mouthful, from this point forward we'll just call it Perkins or Perkins 5. My name is Meredith O'Reilly, and I'm a grant negotiator for TEA's Grants Administration Division. And I'm here with fellow negotiator Susan Alexander Wilson to present this training today. Also on hand are members of our CTE program staff, as well as several senior members of Grants Administration. So thank you everyone for being here today. Closed captioning in the form of a live transcript and subtitles that are automatically generated by the Zoom webinar platform will be available in today's training. To access the closed captioning features, locate the Closed Captioning Live Transcript icon on the Zoom menu bar and click it. The menu will provide you the options to show subtitles, view the full transcript as the training takes place, or select additional subtitle settings. I have a couple of quick things to mention. The presentation today is being presented as a recording, but you can still ask questions in Zoom. Please type them into the question answer feature in Zoom rather than in chat. We'll be monitoring these questions throughout the training. For some questions, we might respond directly into the Q&A feature, but we will also have time at the end to go over a few questions in greater detail. Also, we will be posting on our website our presentation slides and training video for our Perkins 5 training for LEAs. Links to these training items will be on our Grant Resources page, and later in the presentation, I'll show you how to navigate there. Before we get started, we would like to share a disclaimer that this presentation is meant to provide general guidance based on our agency's current understanding of the subject matter. However, the information is subject to change, and it's important to note that the presentation does not constitute legal advice. We advise you to confer with your own legal counsel before acting on any information or guidance presented today. Here's a look at what we'll be talking about today. We'll start out by previewing what's new with Perkins 5 and eGrants this year. Then we'll walk you through basic information you need for both getting started and for preparing the application, including the sequence of steps you must follow in order to access your application. Then we'll do an overview of the application itself, all the way to how you certify and submit it to TEA. Additionally, we want to share some useful resources that can help make it easier for you to complete your application or to find information you might need. And finally, we'll wrap things up with some time for Q&A. We have an additional surprise for you. Whether you're new or experienced with Perkins 5, know that we're also going to be sharing some bonus tips from our negotiators. These tips will help your application be in great shape for traveling through TEA's review process more smoothly to reach that desired Notice of Grant Award, or NOGA. So let's talk about what's new with Perkins 5 and 21-22. Well, first of all, we are in Year 2 of the Comprehensive Local Needs Assessment, or CLNA, that was created with the 2021 Perkins 5 application. We'll go over this more later, but in a nutshell it means that if your district completed the Special Collections 5600, or CLNA, last year, then you will not need to do it again this year. We also continue to improve our eGrant system and website resources, and we'll showcase some of these improvements today. The next item is especially a big change for Perkins. We have made a complete switch to using Chrome for all our eGrants applications. For many years, we actually recommended that for Perkins in particular, you needed to use Internet Explorer, and this is no longer the case. For Perkins 5 or for any of our eGrants applications, please only use a Chrome browser because we are not supporting eGrants for Explorer any longer. Over the next several slides, we are going to walk you through some of the basics to help you get ready to complete your Perkins 5 application. In this section, we are going to visit our homepage, look at a few important resources, and show you how to update key information as an important preliminary step. Let's start with the TEA homepage because it's from here that you can navigate to necessary links or to additional resources that might be helpful for Perkins 5. As we go through our presentation, we will highlight different navigation links all from this homepage. So we'll come back here a few times to this helpful starting point. Notice the bar at the very top of the homepage where it says Popular Applications. We're going to start there. First, we're going to visit the Grant Opportunities page. The link is roughly in the center of the Popular Applications bar on the TEA homepage. The Grant Opportunities page is where you'll find the Request for Application, or RFA, for Perkins 5. Actually, it's where you'll find current and past RFAs for many different types of grants. Let's click the link and take a look. Once you are on the Grant Opportunities page, you'll see different sections that will allow you to search for a grant. Use the drop-down features or our new search field to navigate to Perkins 5. Once you select the Perkins 5 grant, you'll see its specific RFA. Even though I'm showing last year's grant in this slide, be sure that you're looking for the 21-22 Perkins 5 grant. Of course, anytime you do need to refer to a previous year's Perkins RFA, you would access it from this same web page. The RFA contains program, funding, and application information specific for Perkins 5. I'm not going to go over the full RFA, but I wanted to point out that if you scroll down a bit to the Application and Support Information section, you'll see the link to the Perkins Program Guidelines. This is also where you would find any errata that identify changes to the program. Different grants may have additional resources included in this section. The next section on the RFA is called Critical Events. Here's where you'll find reporting periods and the timeline of major deadlines that pertain to Perkins 5. If you're wondering when the last day you can amend is, or when that final expenditure report is due, this is where you'll look. We'll see critical events again when we go into eGrants. As a reminder, the RFA is kept up to date, but is subject to change, so visit this page often to check for errata, adjusted dates, or any other critical changes. All right, so we're just about ready to go to eGrants. We're going to go back to the TEA homepage and look again at that Popular Applications bar. The first link is to Ask TED, the Texas Education Directory. From here, you can search for and review district and campus information, including addresses, enrollment numbers, contact information, grade spans, and more specific details. Hopefully by now, your LEA has already updated Ask TED with the most current district and campus information, because we use this information for both federal and state grants. So it's important that the information be accurate and current. Work with your district Ask TED coordinator to make changes or updates to this directory. Moving farther down the Popular Applications bar, you'll see the link for our TEA login, or TEAL, which is where we're going to go next in order to access eGrants. But before we go to TEAL, take note of the Help Desk icon in the far upper right corner of the page. The TEA login, or TEAL, is how we access eGrants as well as expenditure reporting. It's also where Ask TED coordinators make the necessary district and campus updates for the directory. You'll want to make sure that all pertinent grant staff for your district have access to TEAL with the appropriate applications and roles assigned for their position. And if you haven't already taken care of this, do it soon so that everyone who needs access has it. If you've already got access to TEAL, you'll simply enter your information and log in. If you're a new user, you can request access by clicking the Request New User Account link and follow the instructions. Should you have any difficulty, click the appropriate Help link further down on the TEA login page, or go back to that Help Desk icon we just talked about on the homepage slide. With either link, you can submit a ticket so that our TEA staff can help you. All staff with access to eGrants are assigned a specific role, and this role determines what privileges they will have regarding the Perkins application, compliance reports, special collections, and other areas within eGrants. This chart showing all the different privileges is available on our Grant Resources page. Grantee staff, writer-editors, and viewers have limited privileges, while grantee managers and grantee officials have more privileges. An important distinction between the two upper-level roles is that a grantee official is the only role that can submit an original application or original amendment. That's because only an authorized official can bind the LEA into a legal agreement. However, if TEA requires changes to ensure compliance, a grantee manager can submit the revised application or amendment as it goes through negotiations. Also, did you know that a grantee official, that highest role, can delete a draft application or amendment? It has to be done before that draft is submitted to TEA, but yes, an unnecessary draft can be deleted without affecting your most recent version of your application. But again, only a grantee official will have that magic delete icon, and we'll get a peek at that icon in a later slide. These distinctions are so important that our first negotiator tip is to really understand what role each staff member has, because you always want to make sure your application or amendment gets submitted smoothly to TEA, especially if you're nearing a deadline. So if you're not a grantee official, then find out early on who is, so that you can communicate with them in a timely manner that an application is ready to be reviewed, certified, and submitted to TEA. Or if you accidentally start an amendment, you can ask a grantee official to delete that draft. Should you need to change your role within eGrants for any application, you'll need to log into TEAL and click the link for Add Modify Access. Then follow the instructions and submit your change request. The designated approver, such as an LEA superintendent, has to approve the change in order for it to take effect. If you are a designated approver, we encourage you to review and clean up eGrants Access regularly to remove staff roles that are no longer applicable. If your LEA has a new superintendent or other designated approver, work with them as early as possible to set up their TEAL access so that other TEAL processes can continue with minimal complications. When you log into eGrants, you'll arrive at the eGrants homepage. There are several important tabs, and we'll talk about some of these in just a moment. But I want to point out a couple of other things about this page. Below the tabs is another critical events section, and it ties back to the very same one that we saw when we were looking at the Grant Opportunities page and the RFA for Perkins. This critical events section will highlight deadlines that are approaching within 30 days, and it will flag ones that are due within 5 days. So it's a good idea to always take a look at this section whenever you log in. Speaking of the Grant Opportunities page, you can get back to it by clicking the link in the bottom section should you need to revisit the RFA or the program guidelines. So the first thing you want to do is make sure your contacts are up to date by visiting the Contacts tab. This tab isn't just for Perkins staff. It's for anyone who has a role in eGrants for any of the applications within the system. So this list of contacts would include key Perkins staff, ESSA staff, special education staff, or anyone working on the newest ESSER applications. You can add, edit, or remove as necessary, but it's super important to review the information for accuracy and to always keep it up to date. Among the Perkins eGrant staff listed here, you'll want to make sure to include the grantee official who will certify and submit, as well as the primary and secondary contacts, and one of these should be the CTE director. Should any of your contacts change, you can update this tab at any time. However, updating this tab will not automatically update the application's contact information, so as appropriate, be sure to update your applicant contacts on your Perkins application as well. Okay, we're getting closer to that Perkins application. In this next section, we'll go over the steps required for opening access to the application. Let's take a look at the sequence of schedules. There are two special collections that are required in order to open the link for the next step, the ADC, or Application Designation and Certification, and then ultimately the application. The special collections are the SC 5600 or CLNA, which remember most districts completed last year, and the SC 5003, which has to be coordinated with ESSA and SPED staff before it is submitted. Once those are completed in eGrants, the ADC will open, and once it's submitted, you'll be able to access the Perkins 5 application. These preliminary schedules and the application will involve more than just your Perkins team, so it's important to start reaching out and collaborating early. You'll want to coordinate with ESSA and SPED staff to complete the list of contacts and to submit the SC 5003. You'll also want to work with business office staff to be sure items budgeted in the application are properly coded. For example, it's a good idea to talk to them about your district's capitalization level so that you can properly budget supplies as well as capital outlay, and this can help you avoid amendments later. You'll also want to communicate with anyone involved with the Comprehensive Local Needs Assessment, even if it was submitted last year, so that you can continue to stay on track with your planned strategies. Fiscal agents and shared service arrangement members will want to start communicating and setting up agreements. And there might be others that are important for processes or needs that are specific to your LEA. So get in touch and start collaborating soon if you haven't already started. Of course, you'll also want to gather prior year and current year resources. Here's a great tip. Remember that for most LEAs, you already have a great resource, and that's last year's application. Use the most recent version as a guide to help you avoid renegotiating the same items from year to year. For most of you, you can also review your SE 5600 and other preliminary schedules to see what was completed last year. Finally, know your 21-22 Perkins 5 planning amount. These amounts are provided on our entitlements page, and we'll see a quick way to access this link in the last section of our presentation. Both the SC 5600 and the SC 5003 are accessed from the Special Collections tab. The status column will indicate whether the schedule has been certified and submitted to TEA or whether it is still in draft. If you're having trouble accessing the ADC later, come back to this tab to make sure both of your special collections have been properly submitted. As we've mentioned before, LEAs that completed the SE 5600 or Comprehensive Local Needs Assessment will not need to complete it for 21-22 because we're in year 2 of that CLNA period. But if your LEA is new to Perkins, or if there's been a major change such as to a shared services arrangement, you will need to request access to the SE 5600. To do this, send an email to Dale Fowler of our CTE program team. His email address is dale.fowler@tea.texas.gov. You can also find his email address in the sidebar on the CTE program webpage. Also on the CTE program page is a great resource for those newly eligible LEAs having to complete the CLNA for the first time, and that is our recently updated CLNA guidebook. It will provide the details you need to complete the SE 5600. Now let's talk about the other special collection, the SE 5003. This is a consolidated schedule that must be coordinated and completed by ESSA, SPED, and Perkins staff together. There are 3 parts to this schedule. Part 1 is equitable access and participation. All three programs must indicate any barriers to equitable access and participation for groups receiving services. These barriers might be different for each of the programs. If there are no barriers at all, you can select the first radio button. But if there are barriers, you can use the drop-down menu to select the group and then identify the barrier. If you click the instructions link on this schedule, there's a list of example barriers you can refer to, but there could be others your district experiences. In Part 2, all three federal programs must review guidelines, provisions and assurances, and certifications. There are buttons for documents that detail general and program-specific guidelines, as well as provisions and assurances. You must also review the documents for debarment and suspension and for lobbying certification. In Section C, you must check the box to certify that your LEA accepts and is in compliance with all of the guidelines and requirements in this section. And finally, in Part 3, the authorized official for your LEA will review and complete the Certification and Incorporation section to certify and submit the SC 5003. Remember that Contacts tab earlier? The authorized official will complete this section by selecting the appropriate name under Select Contact and then clicking the Certify and Submit button. The submitter information will be completed automatically by the system. All right, so the two special collections are in, and now it's time to complete the ADC, or the Application Designation and Certification Schedule. To access the ADC, hover over the Grants tab and then scroll down to the link Apply for Eligible Grants. Select the Perkins 5 application and then the ADC form. In Part 1 of the form, you'll select the appropriate radio button for how your LEA will apply for the Perkins funds. Your LEA might apply on own as an independent, apply as a fiscal agent of a shared services arrangement, apply as a member of a shared services arrangement, or identify that your LEA is choosing not to apply for the funds at all. Now, it's important to note that your designation for the Perkins ADC should be the same as the designation you marked on the SC 5600. If it doesn't match, you'll get an error message. The system provides this validation as an additional check to make sure that you're submitting properly and consistently. Now, if you're applying as an SSA member, you'll designate the fiscal agent for your SSA using the drop-down feature. Here's a tip that goes back to the importance of communicating and coordinating with others. In order for the fiscal agent to appear in the drop-down menu for your area, they need to submit their ADC and apply as a fiscal agent before the SSA members submit their ADC. But as an additional note for fiscal agents, be sure to confirm that all your SSA members have submitted their ADC before you submit your actual Perkins application. This way, you'll be working with the correct total budget amount. The SSA members have to list you as the fiscal agent in order for their funds to be included. One more note about the ADC. If your LEA is entitled to less than $15,000 for Perkins and you are choosing to apply independently rather than join an SSA, you must complete and attach a waiver when you submit your application. This form is available from Grants Administration. Contact the negotiator for your region for assistance. In Part 2, once again, your authorized official will review and complete the Certification and Incorporation section and then certify and submit. And guess what? Once the ADC is in, your application for Perkins 5 will open and be ready for you to complete. So now I'm going to pass this over to Susan, and she'll walk you through the application.
Thank you, Meredith. I'm Susan Alexander Wilson, one of your friendly TEA grant negotiators, and I'm going to take you through the application schedule by schedule. Let's get started. Once the application designation and certification form is submitted, the application will appear under Apply for Eligible Grants and will have a status of Available, as you see right here. You'll click on the grant title and open the Table of Contents page. From the Table of Contents screen, you can view errors, attach files, view and print, delete draft, certify, and submit. Note the last submit date. This will be updated each time the grantee submits the application or amendment. Only an authorized official may certify and submit the application. Clicking the Save button will produce a list of all errors at the top of the schedule. Fields that need attention will be outlined in red. You will not be able to submit the application until the errors are corrected. Errors and narratives will not trigger an error message and may be subject to further negotiations. Every schedule you save will show a list of errors, if any. You don't have to complete the entire application at once. You can save the application even with errors and come back to it later. It will remain in draft status until it is certified and submitted. When you click the Attach File button on the Table of Contents, you'll land on this page. Should you need to attach a waiver or any other document to your application, you'd do that here. Just follow the usage instructions and it should be pretty simple. Sometimes the biggest delay we have in awarding grants is simply not being able to contact a person at the district or charter school about negotiations. For this reason, we're now requiring 2 different contacts on our applications. Ideally, one of the contacts will be the CTE director if the district has one. Our negotiation staff need to be able to communicate with someone, even if the primary contact is not available, especially in the summertime when many of these grants will be processed. The secondary contact will be able to answer questions about the grant just as the primary contact would, but if not, they should be able to find someone who can if the primary contact is not available. Email addresses and phone numbers must be correct so negotiation staff can successfully contact the LEA. Help us to avoid negotiation notes being lost in cyberspace due to incorrect emails. Similarly, help us avoid phone calls to wrong numbers due to errors in typing phone numbers. The DUNS number will pre-populate. If it doesn't, or if it's incorrect, the LEA should contact TEA to correct or update the number. Please double-check these items carefully before the application is submitted to TEA. The next schedule in the application is the PS 3012, Local Application. The local application contains questions to be answered by referencing the Comprehensive Local Needs Assessment found in the Special Collections tab. Since this is Year 2, you can click the Copy Prior Year Data button to populate the answers. This will save you some time if you're in your second year of the CLNA. The next schedule is the PS 3350 Accountability. The Perkins 5 performance measures, pre-filled from Perkins data, showing you the actual measurement for the school years listed and the statewide targets. You do not have to come up with those percentages on your own. The 2019-2020 actual percentages, as well as the new local target percentages, will be added soon. The actual percentage not being within 90% of the statewide target percentage will trigger the enabling and requiring of the Explain Why and Describe Strategies fields. Part B of the PS 3350 asks you to describe the programs you have designed to help CTE students from special populations meet performance measure targets, and to describe the procedures for evaluating and continuously improving CTE student performance in the Perkins program. You can refer to your CLNA if you need help completing this section. And remember that the answers do not require in-depth descriptions. It can be a couple of sentences. You don't have to go into deep detail. Now let's take a look at the budget. We'll go through the budget schedules one by one in order. This is just a little helpful hint as you're working through the application. Every schedule has an instructions button at the top. If you have any questions or you're uncertain about what to do or where to enter what on any schedule, just click that instructions button and a tab will open up with very clear and thorough instructions for that schedule. That's a great place to start with your questions. It's best to work through these schedules in order, and we'll start with the BS 6001, Program Budget Summary. You'll see the total funds will be visible, and for Perkins there's only the final amount. There is no carryover, and reallocations will be populated on line 5 once they're calculated and available. TEA staff will complete manual adjustments on behalf of the LEAs at that time. Fiscal agents may need to remind SSA member districts to complete the ADC promptly so their entitlement amounts can be included in the total budget for the fiscal agent of the SSA. To see a list of all districts that are currently listed as part of the SSA, click the View List of SSA Members button. If the fiscal agent has submitted their ADC, the member districts should go ahead and complete their ADC as soon as possible. This is part 2 of the budget summary. You will enter amounts you want to budget for various class object codes here. The column is very wide, so you may need to move your cursor around a little bit to find the area to enter numbers on the very far right of the column. Indirect costs are budgeted on BS 6001, Part 2A, Line 9. Indirect costs are not required to be budgeted in the application in order to be charged to the grant. If indirect costs are claimed, they are part of the total awarded grant amount. No amendment is required to later add indirect costs to the grant. Part B of the program budget summary is for the breakout of direct admin costs. Now this is capped at 5% of the total award amount, and it includes both direct and indirect admin costs. This year there's a changed validation that ensures Part 2A indirect costs plus Part 2B total of direct admin costs is not greater than the maximum admin cost percentage of total funds available. If the admin costs, which include both direct and indirect, exceeds 5% of the total grant award, you'll get an error message. This is a good time to point out that blank is better than 0. When you're filling in budget amounts, leave budget cells blank when no funds are budgeted. Don't use a 0. After the budget summary, we come to BS 6101, payroll costs. Part 1 is total payroll costs, and that amount is populated from the amount you entered on the budget summary. Part 2 is the number and type of positions. Section A is administrative support or clerical staff. Enter the number of positions, not the dollar amount, to be paid from Perkins grant funds. Section B is LEA positions, and Section C is campus positions. You'll check the box if Perkins funds will be used to pay for any of these positions. If not, don't check the box. This is basically a yes, we are paying positions, or no, we aren't. That way, later on, if the number of positions paid from Perkins funds changes, you don't actually have to submit an amendment. Part 3, substitute, extra duty, and benefits. Similar to Part 2, you'll check the box if Perkins funds will be used to pay any of these costs. And then there's Part 4, confirmation of payroll requirements. You must check the box if any funds are budgeted on this schedule for payroll costs. Next is the BS 6201, Professional and Contracted Services. Some ESCs budget their staff on BS 6201. Any remaining funds not budgeted for items requiring specific approval will be dropped into the line titled Remaining 6200 Costs that do not require specific approval. You can refer to the program guidelines on the Grants Opportunity page for a list of allowed and unallowed costs. Part 2, you'll enter any direct administrative costs associated with 6201. And Part 3, itemized professional and consulting services, is hidden because it doesn't apply to the funding sources for Perkins grant. For more information on professional and contracted services, see the Budgeting Cost Guidance Handbook on the TEA Grants Administration website. I suggest you bookmark that once you go there in your browser, so you'll have it for easy reference as you complete all of the budget schedules. You'll see budgeting cost guidance for every budget schedule in the application. If you budgeted funds on the budget summary for BS 6301, Supplies and Materials, you may be looking for that schedule here. You won't find it because supplies and materials do not require specific approval. The amount is budgeted in the budget summary and no further action is required. Now we have BS 6401, Other Operating Costs. The activities here require specific approval to be allowable. That includes field trips and out-of-state travel. Refer to program guidelines to determine allowable activities. Travel for students to conferences requires pre-authorization in writing, and the Participant Support Costs form can be found on the Grants Administration website and should be submitted to grantsupport@tea.texas.gov. Other required documentation forms can be found on the TEA website. Any remaining budget amounts will display on the line not requiring specific approval. The grayed out areas are not allowable. If you have questions, just follow the instructions on the form or contact your negotiator. The next schedule is BS 6501, Debt Services. You're required to open and save that schedule even if no funds are budgeted, and it's very rare that anyone budgets funds on BS 6501. Debt services. These are costs related to a lease purchase. They must be approved through TEA. They must be allowable. It's usually a 2 to 3 year agreement, and the purchase could not be completed in a single year. The contract dates must include this current school year and must be addressed in the LEA's Comprehensive and District Needs Assessment. Again, if you don't have funds budgeted on the BS 6501, you'll still need to open it and save it in order to submit your application. The last budget schedule is the BS 6601, Capital Outlay. The total capital outlay cost line is pre-populated with the amount you entered on the budget summary. All capital outlay requires specific approval. You'll see on this example on line 2, $75 was entered, and that generated a warning. We've added that warning message when LEAs save the form with an amount less than $100 for any of the capital expenditures on Part 1, lines 1, 2, or 3. That's just to make sure that's the correct amount you intended to enter. If so, you can disregard that warning. If not, go ahead and correct it. On Part 2 of the BS 6601, you'll enter generic descriptions and quantities for furniture, equipment, vehicles, or software budgeted on Part 1.
Even though this schedule does say vehicles, note that vehicles are not allowed for Perkins. Now you'll enter generic descriptions like air compressor for welding program. TEA prefers you don't use brand names, so please refrain from adding a brand name, and then enter the total number of units. The describe how the item will be used to accomplish the objective of this program line is grayed out because no response is required. Now let's look at the BS 6020, required uses of funds. Part 1, total budgeted costs. The amounts listed in this section are read from the costs entered on BS 6001 for each class object code. You won't be entering those numbers manually. We'll get to the required uses on the next slide. Here's part 2 of the BS 6020. The Perkins grant requires that funds be used for the purposes listed on this schedule. You'll use this schedule to show how you'll apportion funds among programs that fulfill the required uses. There must be funds budgeted on all 6 lines, or local funds can be used. Most applications use Perkins funds for all 6 of the purposes. The amounts total and the indirect costs from Part 1 are added automatically, and the percentages are computed to show the percentage of funds allotted to each required use. You'll see on this example that there are funds budgeted for each of the 6 local uses. It's provide career exploration and career development activities, provide professional development, provide the skills necessary to pursue careers in high-skill, high-wage, in-demand occupations, support integration of academic skills into CTE programs of study, support integration of programs of study, and evaluate Perkins-funded programs including CLNA. In Part 2B, you'll complete this section if you're unable to meet all 6 Perkins funding requirements with Perkins funds. You're required to show state and local fund amounts in Part 2B only if you're unable to meet the funding requirements with Perkins funds. This isn't typical, but it's here for you if you need it. On the table of contents and on the GS 2000 Certify and Submit schedule, we've improved the visibility of the Certify and Submit buttons. Some LEAs, maybe you, missed certifying and submitting their original applications. It seems you would only see the Save button and did not find or scroll down the page to find the Certify and Submit button. Therefore, sometimes the application was saved instead of certifying and submitting it. We've improved the application this year to help with that. On the Table of Contents page, we've made the Certify and Submit link more obvious and have added a line above the Certify and Submit button that states the date and time the application was submitted by the LEA, which is the last submit date. If you open the schedule and find the last submit date is blank, it indicates the application has not been submitted. When submitting amendments, the last submit date is updated with each submission. On the GS 2000 Certify and Submit schedule, we moved the Certify and Submit button to the action ribbon near the bottom of the screen. That way LEAs don't need to scroll through the page to find the button. It's right there. You can click it, certify, and submit the application. Now the LEA no longer needs to scroll down to find the Certify and Submit button, but they still need to scroll down to complete the Authorized Official section by selecting the appropriate person under Select Contact. The Submitter Information section is automatically completed once the Certify and Submit button is selected to send the completed application to TEA. It's like an electronic signature. Now you've submitted the application. Before we move on from the application, I have one last helpful hint. It's the delete draft capability. If you need to start over,
or you find an unintentional draft has been created, a grantee official can delete it from the table of contents. Look for the green trash can and click it and get rid of that pesky draft. Our application's been submitted, and let's go back to Meredith.
Thanks, Susan. Throughout this presentation, we've mentioned some very useful resources, so let's take a quick moment to show you how to get to them. First, we want you to get to know our Grants Administration web pages. There are two ways to get there. First, from the TEA homepage, hover over the green box for Financing Grants on the navigation bar, and then select Grants Administration under the Grants heading. But there's a shortcut you might not know about. A quick way to Grants Administration is the link tea.texas.gov/grants. You can type this in or bookmark it for easy access whenever you need. It will take you to the landing page, and in particular, I want to show you the sidebar because that's where so many of the resources we've been talking about can be found. The first section under Grants helps you navigate among the main pages for Grants Administration. And if you click on any of those Grants Administration pages, you'll see that the many useful links we include under the sidebar's Related Content and Contact Information sections are accessible on any page you visit, and that makes the resources you're looking for always easy to find. Remember that chart with the eGrants roles and privileges? You can find the link to it on our Grant Resources webpage, and you can get there easily by clicking the Grant Resources link in the upper section of the sidebar on any of our main Grants Administration web pages. The Grant Resources page is also where you will find these Perkins 5 training slides and the video, along with other useful links and information. In the Related Content section of the sidebar, you'll find links to Amending an Application, the Budgeting Cost Guidance Handbook, our Entitlements page where you can find your Perkins 5 amount, and a link to guidance on expenditure reporting. You can also access forms that you might need to submit to TEA or maintain locally for prior approval, disclosure, or justification, and a link to our Guidelines, Provisions, and Assurances page. At the bottom of the sidebar is a very important section, and that is how to contact us. The link to our division contacts takes you to a document that lists all our negotiators as well as our expenditure reporting team. This is a list of our wonderful staff ready to help you with your grant applications. The negotiators are listed by region, and you can email or call us directly, and we are ready and very happy to answer questions, help with technical issues, or provide other support. If you have questions about expenditure reporting, payment requests, refunds, or TEAL, our fantastic ER team is also ready to help, so print this list or bookmark it because this is the fastest way to get help on your grants. If you have questions about CTE programming, you can access the CTE program page from the TEA homepage. On the navigation bar, hover over the purple box for academics, then click the link for Career and Technical Education. You can also type Career and Technical into the search field to access a link to their page. Remember that guidebook we showed you? Guess what? That's where it's located, on CTE's program page. Our Career and Technical Education program specialists are also assigned by region. Here's the list of our wonderful CTE specialists, as well as their email addresses. You can find their contact information as well on the CTE program page in the sidebar. Okay, I have one last resource to share. You can subscribe to receive bulletins from TEA about grant-related topics. To subscribe, go back to TEA's homepage and near the top right, select Sign up for updates. You'll be directed to a page to enter some basic information about how you want to receive the bulletins. And next, it will have you select topics for updates. For grants, select the Grants topic under Finance and Grants. Well, that wraps up our main Perkins presentation today. We hope you found it useful. And now we're going to go back live to answer your questions.